Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. Very appreciated. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the individuals that are standing social distancing appropriate around the room. Alderman Harry Osterman, who's the chair of the Committee on Housing and Real Estate. Department of Housing Commissioner Marisa Novara. Mark Schwartz, the Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Better Housing. Mark Meany, Executive Vice President of the Chicagoland Apartment Association. Michael Glazer, President of the Neighborhood Building Owners Alliance. Michelle Mills Clemente from the Chicago Association of Realtors. As well as leaders from our lending community, including Dave Casper of BMO Harris, Paul Lambert of Bank of America, and Mark Hoppy of Fifth Third Bank, and Rudy Medina of Second Federal Credit Union. I want to quickly say that these leaders in particular have been standing with us throughout initiatives like Invest Southwest and our Opportunity Zones, along with more recent actions related to COVID-19, such as our Small Business Resiliency Fund and our Micro Business Grant Program. Making it no surprise that they're standing with us now. These are really thoughtful, engaged, civic leaders, and I am grateful for them all being here today. I'd also like to say that our signatories, other signatories who could not be here today, and I want to acknowledge them. They include Byline Bank, CIBC, First Eagle Bank, First Midwest, PNC, Seaway Credit Union, U.S. Bank, Wintrust, and the Northern Trust. This crisis is like nothing we have ever seen or experienced. I think all of us acknowledge that. Simultaneously shocking our health system and our economy as we have undertaken historic measures to halt the spread of this disease and to save lives. And the good news is we are already seeing meaningful results thanks to our bold, data-driven approach. But as we all know, this disease has come with some additional costs that are being borne by those least able to bear them, particularly now. Limiting our city's activity to only essential services has led, in just a matter of weeks, to tens of thousands of Chicagoans seeing their jobs lost or hours dramatically cut, crippling their ability to cover basic needs like food, bills, and of course, housing. While our priority remains the safety and protection of Chicago's families from the COVID-19 virus, our renters and homeowners are hurting. There is no two ways about that. And just as they have stood with us during this crisis by staying home, we have to stand with them, which is what brings us here today. It's a rare day when you see renter advocacy groups, building owners, and lenders all standing on the same side of an issue. But that is literally what we have now. When it comes to COVID-19, there is no them, and there can't be any them. No other. It has to be just us. We are all standing together because we're all in this together. And in order for us to get through this, we all have to work together. And that means standing up for each other. If we don't, our challenges will only become greater, and our recovery will be that much slower. Today, I'm proud to join these individuals standing with me in announcing the Chicago Housing Solidarity Pledge. This is a pledge made with leaders from across our city government, residential housing groups, landlord associations, and lenders, all of whom are standing with their fellow Chicagoans in affirming our shared commitment to provide critical relief to renters and mortgage borrowers who have experienced significant financial impact from the COVID-19 crisis. To do nothing would not only be senseless and cruel, but really hurt our city now and in the future. The Chicago Housing Solidarity Pledge brings all of us together to address this unprecedented challenge and to provide clear guidance on this critical issue. As I have said before, the issues around affordability are interconnected and they're complicated. You cannot solve one part of the ecosystem without impact on other stakeholders. This pledge and the diverse group of stakeholders assembled reflects the interconnectedness, but also a commitment to moving forward together. For our housing lenders, this means establishing on a case-by-case basis measures like a grace period for mortgage payments, suspension of foreclosures, neutral reporting to credit agencies, and not imposing late fees for missed payments. I'd like to add that from the beginning of this crisis, most if not all of these lenders were already working with their customers on these types of measures. For our landlords, this also means grace periods and halting late payments, as well as creating repayment plans in writing, allowing renters who've missed rent payments to spread out their repayment over time. This pledge is the first of its kind in the nation. Unlike those in California, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Boston, whose agreements only apply to residential mortgages like single-family homes, we made certain our pledge also applied to multifamily apartment buildings because it is there where we're seeing the greatest impact for renters and landlords alike. But I also want to be clear on another important part about the obligations that we have to each other as part of this complicated and interconnected ecosystem. Just because we're in this pandemic doesn't mean that people can just forego making any effort to pay rent or a mortgage. We just can't do that. We all have obligations to each other, and we must endeavor, even in this difficult time, as best we can to meet those obligations. Those who are still able to need to in order for landlords and lenders to be able to work with those who can't. Times are tough right now. There is no denying that. I want Chicago's renters and homeowners to know that we hear you and we are working to do everything that we can at the local level to get you the support that you need. And I want to thank again the individuals who are here, once again, for their work and standing with all of Chicago in this moment. Today's action is just the latest step in that effort, and I look forward to working with these leaders in the months ahead. Unfortunately, we know that the lingering effects and the impacts of COVID-19 are going to be a legacy that stays with us for some time. So it's why we need to take these kinds of thoughtful actions together to be able to think about not only what we do in this moment, but what we do looking down the road to make sure that we create healthy and strong communities. Thank you once again, and at this point I invite Commissioner Novara to provide some more details. Commissioner.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, for your leadership throughout this unprecedented crisis, and thank you for bringing this unique and powerful collection of lenders, housing providers, and tenant advocates together. The Chicago Housing Solidarity Pledge is about everyone doing his or her part to weather this storm and minimize evictions and foreclosures in the aftermath. It's also a declaration that Chicago is united, and we have to be. COVID-19 has rocked Chicago's housing market. The numbers are pretty stark. We at the Department of Housing polled some of our affordable housing providers, and they reported decreases in rent collection as high as 61% in the month of April. And our modeling shows that renters are being hit up to 10 times harder than homeowners, in part because about half of the jobs that have been at the highest risk of being lost during this time are low-paying jobs to begin with. So the same Chicagoans who may not have been able to save or prepare for an emergency are the very same people being hit the hardest right now. The city is doing all that we can to address the issue with little help so far from the federal government. Last month, we made 2,000 $1,000 grants directly to Chicagoans who had lost jobs or hours due to COVID-19. Last week, we introduced new grants to affordable housing providers to make up for rental shortfalls, helping to stabilize more than 3,400 households. And so when we say we're united, here's what that means. It means that tenants who've lost work are reaching out to their landlords to make a plan. It means that, as the mayor said, tenants who have not lost work support their neighbors who have by paying their rent. It means that landlords work in good faith with their tenants to show flexibility and create a plan together. And the reason these housing providers are able to show flexibility is that their lenders in turn are showing flexibility to them in their repayment plans. So if every actor in this interconnected chain is proactively communicating, is working in good faith, is showing flexibility, then our hope and our belief is that we can make it through this crisis without a wave of evictions or foreclosures, which is not in anyone's interest. We cannot afford to lose any ground when it comes to stably housing the people of Chicago. And to further assist with that goal, I'm happy to announce that the Center for Conflict Resolution is making mediation services available at no charge to landlords and tenants affected by COVID-19 to work out rent payment plans or whatever is needed to avoid eviction. I encourage landlords and tenants to go to the Center for Conflict Resolution early on if they're having difficulties to avoid court or eventual eviction, if at all possible. You know, we as the city cannot regulate banks, but we can establish public accountability and public expectations about the way that we will work together throughout this crisis, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. I'm very, very thankful for these partners as we work together to keep Chicagoans stably housed during and after this crisis. And I would now like to introduce my colleague, the chairman of the Committee on Housing and Real Estate, and a great partner in this work, Alderman Harry Osterman of the 48th Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm glad to be here today. I want to really thank Mayor Lightfoot for her outstanding leadership during this crisis on behalf of all Chicagoans. She's done an amazing job with her administration, her team, and working with stakeholders on a array of issues. As we are ordered by the governor and strongly encouraged by the mayor to stay home, housing security and housing stability for every family in Chicago has never been more important. Today, I want to applaud all the people that are taking the Housing Solidarity Pledge and encourage every landlord, every tenant to work together in unison to make sure that we are supporting each other. Across the city, since this crisis has started, neighbors are stepping up to help neighbors, businesses are helping each other, and landlords and tenants are working side by side. As this extends, it's critical that we continue to work together in unison to support each other. Today is an important step for those that are here to take the pledge, and we want to extend this to every community in the city, every landlord, to make sure that every single resident has safe, secure, affordable housing that they can rely on during this crisis and in the future. The economic impacts that the mayor has described are felt in very significant ways, and families are struggling in deep, deep ways. And we at the city are going to do everything in our power to support renters, homeowners, to make sure that we get through this together in a safe and secure way. As the Housing and Real Estate Committee Chairman, we are establishing 3 working groups on rental assistance, on homeowner support, and on homelessness to work on these key issues during this crisis and beyond. The goals of these committees is to work with the agencies within the city as well as other government stakeholders and nonprofit stakeholders to really look at these key issues and help come up with solutions that will help homeowners and renters and Chicagoans that are deeply affected by this crisis. And that's work that's going to be working simultaneously with members of the City Council that are going to be actively engaged in this as they are in their communities helping residents each day. So again, I want to thank everyone that's here, those that are taking the pledge, and we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we can help Chicagoans stay home safely during this crisis. Thank you.
Mayor, one of the mayor's many talents, and she has many, is she does have a knack for bringing people together, sometimes maybe even strange bedfellows. Today, she's bringing together the city's lenders and their landlords in what is clearly an unprecedented time, and in a different way, with a different mode than other cities. As she said, bringing everybody together. Her leadership here is significant in that it wasn't with a stick, but it was really with a plea for pulling together for Chicago. which actually gets to the heart of the matter, and I think got to the heart of many cold-hearted bankers. None of them are here today, though. As the mayor said, or most of the banks have already been doing this, but this pledge has really brought everybody together. And I'm here with a lot of my colleagues, and together we have been doing much of this, but this pledge will allow us to do more and to be crystal clear in what we can do. As the mayor said, it will ensure that we give all of our customers a number of options, including grace periods, for all mortgage payments, suspension of foreclosures, neutral reporting for credit agencies, and no late fees or missed payments. At BMO, we've been part of the community here in Chicago for 160 years. And that means when you're part of the community, it means being part of the solution. We take that charge seriously, as do all of my colleagues. And we're so happy to play a role in what we're going through today. We've recently surpassed over $1 billion in hardship relief deferrals for over 10,000 consumers. And we've secured SBA PPP approval for over almost 20,000 clients and over $5 billion. In both cases, a very significant portion of this is right here in Chicago. And let me end with one final personal note. It seems, Mayor, like it was years ago that many of us stood in a crowded room in Austin when the mayor brought forth the community with the Invest Southwest. And what she pointed out in terms of the great inequality in the neighborhoods was an issue then. It's only become a greater issue. This crisis has only made the gap wider, and it's not a crisis it's not a problem that we can't solve, but it's not solvable with just a small dollar amount and with everybody putting half heart into it. So this is a real opportunity to step up in those neighborhoods. And I didn't know how prescient you were at the time, and maybe you didn't, but it was a problem then. It's a greater problem today, and I think all of us stand with you to make sure that that gets better, not worse. Thank you, and I think I'm turning it to Rudy. I think.
Well, good afternoon, and let me start off by thanking the mayor for having me here today. My name is Rodolfo Medina. I am the president for Second Federal Credit Union, and we are a nonprofit credit union that primarily has branches and serves the southwest side. Our membership is basically made up of low-income Latino and African-American families. And let me start off by saying that we stand with this pledge, so much so that we started putting it in practice 2 months ago when our customers started calling us and saying that they were out of a job and they could not make their mortgage payments. We started working with them and giving them 90-day forbearances and committed to them that once those 90 days were up, we were going to continue working with them to keep them in their homes. I'm happy to say that as of last night, we had about 350 families that we were able to get through the forbearance program and offer them a 90-day relief of making a mortgage payment. Two more things I'll say and I'll end. One is we should not repeat the same mistakes we did 10 years ago under the mortgage crisis, where thousands of good families were left, in foreclosure. The mayor has repeatedly asked the city of Chicago to stay in. It's up to us to work with these families to give them a home in which to stay in. So, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Swartz. I'm the Executive Director at Lawyers Committee for Better Housing, and we're a grantee agency of the city. And we've been around for 40 years advocating for renters and giving renters free legal assistance and free supportive services. Our clients are predominantly rent-burdened, mostly severely rent-burdened, which means that over 50% of their incomes is going to pay rent. And the rest of it has to go to, the other necessities, medical, transportation, clothes, food, and the like. So this is a problem that's been with the city for some time. And the pandemic has just heightened the problem by adding a larger group of people to this group that is at risk of eviction, at risk of losing their housing. And so we stand behind this endeavor wholeheartedly, because we think that it is appropriate that landlords and tenants speak to each other and try to work this out and make eviction actually a court of last resort. Eviction court has always seemed like a place, where people who choose not to pay their rent or or more or less deadbeats go to be evicted, and that is truly not the case. We find that people are living paycheck to paycheck. We know from the research that people have less than $400 in their savings at any one time, and so a little blip is going to put them at risk of being in eviction court. And what I see here is a group of lenders and property managers that are saying, we should think about other ways to deal with this situation, especially for people that can be stabilized. So what do I bring to the table? I am one of the group of legal aid agencies in Chicago that is also very concerned about an onslaught of eviction filings after the the stay-at-home order ends, and after the court's order, which right now keeps eviction court closed until May 18th. We expect it's probably going to extend a little more, tracking the governor's order to stay at home. But at some point, the eviction court's going to open up again. And we are going to represent renters and try to advise them when they're talking to their landlords, both the people in this room and the landlords more broadly, so that we make sure that the agreements that they enter into are fair and binding, so that they are avoiding being in eviction court. It's my position that with the new governor's order that prohibits commencement of evictions, no one should even be giving renters notices at this point. It sort of goes against the whole stay-at-home social distancing concept, but they are still giving these notices out. And to renters, I need to tell you that as long as those notices are outstanding, you're at risk of not following, by not paying attention to it and responding to it, that when eviction opens up again, these notices are going to put you into eviction court. So please contact a lawyer or reach out to the landlord and talk to the landlord, but whatever you do, make sure that you do get it in writing, and I'm glad that that is the recommendation here, that agreements are going to be in writing. I also want to offer up the solution of homeless prevention dollars to try to stabilize people, because we know that the city already has renters rental assistance, and they're trying to get more. I understand through the CARES Act, we might be able to get more funding through CDBG funds. The state also has homeless prevention dollars, and all of this can be gotten through going through the 311 call center and asking for short-term rental assistance. Lawyers Committee for Better Housing also has homeless prevention dollars in the courthouse, and if court opens up again, we're hoping that people will go to the, what we call the CERA, the Court-Based Emergency Rental Assistance Program, to try to get these kinds of resources, because we believe that if we can stabilize and slow down this particular process, that rental assistance might be able to assist a lot of people. The issue, and Commissioner Novara has talked about this, was we're waiting also for federal support. We really need federal relief to come to bear, so that renters and people that mortgagors also are receiving the assistance that they need. But if we can get those kinds of resources to bear, hopefully we can keep people placed, because we don't need to displace people just to have new people come in, because right now we're all in this together, and a lot of people are unable to pay their rent for the short term. But we're hoping this is going to wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Meany. I'm the Executive Vice President at the Chicagoland Apartment Association. We're an association that represents owners and managers of over 230,000 market rate and affordable rental apartments across Chicagoland and throughout the state, ranging from the downtown high-rises to neighborhood two-flats. As an industry, we employ thousands of people in Illinois who continue to selflessly serve residents as property managers, maintenance technicians, custodians, leasing agents, and in other essential roles. We are truly all in this together, and we're committed to being a part of the solution for renters and housing providers in need during these unprecedented times. The best strategy is for property managers and residents to partner together to find optimal solutions, and we appreciate the efforts of Mayor Lightfoot and her staff to help all of us navigate through this difficult process. Multifamily building owners and managers have been practicing grace and patience, working with tenants individually since the onset of the pandemic back in March on extended payment plans, waiving late fees, offering significant grace periods, just as the mayor suggested. And we expect these types of practices and accommodations to repeat themselves tens of thousands of times moving forward. Early open communication from residents regarding COVID-19 related needs is the key to finding the best resolutions. And likewise, we're encouraged that lenders are committed to working with apartment owners to provide the financial relief necessary to ensure that we can continue to provide healthy, safe, affordable homes for residents throughout the city. I want to thank you again for your leadership, Mayor Lightfoot. We're happy to be standing with you today, proactively taking steps to be a part of the solution and further demonstrating our industry's commitment to the city of Chicago. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce Michelle Mills Clement from the Chicago Association of Realtors.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Mills Clement, CEO of the Chicago Association of Realtors, representing about 16,000 members across the city of Chicagoland, where we advocate for private property owners' rights. During these unprecedented times, both ends of the spectrums need assistance, property owners and tenants. The best way for us to navigate this crisis is together. Communication will be key for tenants and property owners to find solutions on a case-by-case basis. Encouraging residents who are able to pay their rent to do so will provide greater opportunity for property owners who are financially able to work with tenants who are facing financial hardships as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. For rental property owners, mortgage forbearance is only temporary and eases only a portion of the financial obligations of property owners. Forbearance is not forgiveness. Furthermore, it doesn't eliminate ongoing property taxes, maintenance, utility fees, all of which the city relies on. We are committed to ensuring our communities are healthy, vibrant, and diverse places to live, work, and play. Property owners and landlords are key parts of our communities and provide a vital resource. Many of our Realtor members have been working with their tenants to ensure that they are able to stay in their homes already. We want to ensure those efforts are acknowledged. We believe the best way to navigate this crisis is to continue to work collaboratively with lawmakers and community partners and stakeholders for positive outcomes for private property owners and all of the stakeholders involved in the City of Chicago's great neighborhoods. We're proud to be a part of these important conversations with great diversity of voices, which allows us to have a larger impact in all the communities that we serve. We thank the mayor for the opportunity, and we hope to continue this great partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your unbelievable leadership during this time. My name is Paul Lambert. I'm the Bank of America Chicago Market President. And I really just wanted to also, Dave mentioned, we're over 160 years of history and partnership in the city along with BMO. And we've been with this city through a lot of tough times, and we're going to be with this city through many, many times when we get beyond and through this difficult time. Bank of America is very committed to being, along with our partners, part of the solution here in the city of Chicago as we fight through this very, very difficult virus. That's why we activated a client assistance program. That program is about supporting individuals with their mortgages, their home loan, their credit cards, and making sure that we offer them payment deferral. We've also provided relief for late fees, as well as, and you mentioned this, Mayor, deferrals for business loans and credit cards to make sure we help our small businesses in the city get through this very, very difficult time. It's why we're also right now deploying $3.6 million to our local nonprofit organizations to make sure that across the city of Chicago that we help our nonprofit organizations help where that need is the greatest throughout the city of Chicago. And we are really, really excited today to extend that support through and being part of the signing of the Chicago Solidarity Pledge. And as I think about that, that's really about helping make sure that we have very, very stable housing during this very, very difficult time. And I'll close with our former chairman, Dr. Walter Massey, who's also a Chicago resident, who said that we will get through this, we will win this war, and when we do, we're going to remember that we did it together. Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Hoppe, the president of Fifth Third Bank of Chicago. I'm going to pile on, Mayor. Leadership. I think everybody's mentioned it, and it's true. It was true when you came into office. It's been true this entire year. But the extraordinary, extraordinary leadership that you've shown through this incredible pandemic we're going through, it's been unbelievable, and we all appreciate it very much. So thank you. So on behalf of Fifth Third Bank, I'm proud to say we're pleased to join with the other leaders who you heard from, some of whom we've heard from today. Some of others are here, and many out there, and the mayor mentioned them, because the banking community has to come together at a time like this. We have to support housing in Chicago and the Chicagoland area. Nothing is more important than that. And that's why we were excited when we had the opportunity to support the Chicago Housing Solidarity Pledge. We were honored to get the call a couple days ago, honored to get the call yesterday to see if we could stop by here today, and we were thrilled to have the opportunity to do it. We're committed to improving the lives of our customers and building a stronger community. We began setting up programs for both consumers and commercial businesses about March 15th. As things started to progress, we knew that was going to be necessary. And we're pleased we did that, and we've provided a lot of support to a lot of people, both corporate and consumers. Part of that means we have to take the right steps to assist our clients during a time of financial stress and strain. We look forward to continuing to work with borrowers, as we have through the last 6 or 8 weeks, throughout Chicago to help them get through this difficult time. Thank you all, and we look forward to better days ahead. Mayor, thank you.
Before we take questions, I just want to reflect again on what this moment means. This has been a very, very difficult time for our city. But there have been moments that have happened about which I'm extraordinarily proud. And today is one of those moments. What we see with the people that are gathered here in this room is they could have all stayed on the sidelines. They could have just let things take their course. But I think to a person, everyone is stepping up to serve the constituencies that are important to them from every different perspective. And in this moment, there are many things that are important: food security, physical security, but having a home and a place that you can lay your head so that you can, as someone said, abide by the various stay-at-home and mobility restrictions that we placed on us as a people, because we know that is the way in which we keep lives, save lives, and that we get to the other side of this pandemic. None of that happens without these folks stepping up in the way that they have. And while we brought them all together today, and I'm happy that we did that, and I am grateful for members of my team who really put this in motion, what we heard too is, as Mark Hoppe just said, March 15th, we knew this was going to be a crisis. We kicked into action. And I think that's true of every single bank that's here. Every single part of this incredible ecosystem knew that if we were going to save people and we're going to keep them in their homes, whether they're renters or landlords, or owners of single-family homes like mine, that we had to step up to avert an even worse crisis on the other side of this. So this is a moment in our community about which we should all be proud. And I just want to say thank you all so much for being who you are, for doing what you do, every single day, but particularly on this day. This is about why we in Chicago are different. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Mayor, while it is an impressive crew, who's to say that the landlords will take this pledge? Besides this event, how will you encourage landlords to also follow what you're asking them to do today?
Well, a part of this is about kind of public accountability, right? You see these banks who are stepped up here. They're offering to work with their customers, the landlords, to give them some reprieve in this very difficult time. And my hope is that landlords, who are all still feeling the same kind of stresses, as Michelle said, they still got to pay utility, property taxes, and so forth. But these banks and others that aren't here in the room are stepping up and saying, we're your partner in this. We want to help you. And I hope that the landlords will take advantage of that. But we can't mandate that it happened. But I think the moral imperative that has been expressed by every single speaker who's come to this podium hopefully will prick the consciousness of everybody, including landlords, to step up and say, I can do better.
I've heard from a couple of aldermen who say they weren't consulted. Have you gotten feedback from aldermen on this idea? How do you reach out to them to make sure they were aware before this meeting? And does this cover those who are undocumented?
Yes, of course it covers people in our undocumented community, which are significant and real contributors to the fabric and vibrancy of neighborhoods all across the way. Look, what I can tell you is we have been working and taking feedback from a number of different stakeholders, aldermen included. Aldermen are very important, right? If they're doing what the voters elected them to do, they are a key window into what's happening in their communities. And we've had 25 plus substantive briefings and discussions with aldermen, which doesn't account for literally the hundreds of hours every single week that our team is reaching out and talking. Aldermen are crucial to pushing out information about these various initiatives, giving us feedback about what's actually happening on the ground, bringing forth their own ideas. I was struck by Chairman Osterman's words today, and I think this is important, and it's happening in other city council committees. They're breaking down into specific working groups to go even deeper on a number of different issues that are important. So there are plenty of opportunities for aldermen, and they're doing it. I mean, you look at a guy like Matt O'Shea down in the 19th Ward, who literally has been tirelessly working to raise money, to support local businesses, and then take those meals that they're creating and feeding first responders and healthcare workers. Or you look at Maria Haddon up on the north side, who's a new alderman, but has dug in and leaned into her organizing and activist roots and really organized her ward in a way that they can best meet the needs of individual residents in this time of the pandemic. And those are just a couple of examples. That kind of work is happening all over the city, and not only are the residents grateful, we're grateful as a city, because I think it underscores why it's important that everyone has to be engaged and involved, and particularly elected officials of all stripes.
Heather Sharon is asking, the Autonomous Tenant Union says, quote, our mayor and city council need to take serious action. Non-binding pledges by landlords and the mayor's pleas to give grace are wholly insufficient.
Well, that's one perspective. But I think if you look at the people who are represented in this room and the people that they represent, I think they offer another. There's always going to be a critic, and we're never going to be able to get everything exactly right according to voices out there. But what this shows, as I said, is people who are part of this ecosystem recognizing the interconnectedness that they have with each other and stepping up in a very big way to say, we're all in. We're going to do what we can to support our customers, our borrowers, our renters, our mortgagees in a time of great need in our city. And I feel like this is something that is a very proud moment for us in the city.
And on to other topics.
Sure.
Another lawsuit filed today against Governor Pritzker. This one is a class action saying that it's time to reopen Illinois. There will be a rally at the Thompson Center as well on Friday. What's your take on that?
Well, look, I'll say this. I don't think that these lawsuits will ultimately win the day. And this is clearly headed to the Illinois Supreme Court. I support and have supported all along the efforts that the governor has taken to make sure that residents all across the state are safe. And the notion that we are going to open up before the data and the science tell us that we're ready is really foolish, and we would be putting lives at risk to do so. I'm very mindful of what's happening in other states that haven't taken the steps that we have taken here in Illinois. And what are we seeing? We're seeing a doubling of cases at an unbelievable rate, even 6 weeks in to this crisis. So I feel very comfortable about the steps that have been taken here. As far as Chicago, we are staying the course.
But Craig Dellamore raises the question, we've seen the in-house parties, the warmer weather, it's going to be a nice weekend. Could the sentiment really bloom because of that and people defiant against this order?
Well, I think that what these incidents, and I don't want to have public policy dictated by TMZ videos, right? What I know is...
It's a real video.
It's a real video, but what I also know is that the vast majority of people in the city are doing what they need to do. They're staying at home and they're being compliant. Yes, have we seen some instances where that hasn't been so? And I will tell you, while these TMZ videos, and of course that's what TMZ does, it's a tabloid, they like to sensationalize things. There have been challenges in other parts of the city that haven't gotten the national or maybe international prominence that these videos have. But what it tells us is it gives us an opportunity to go deeper into certain sectors of the community, whether it's the millennial and the millennial African American community in particular. But there's also other communities where we got to keep doing the education, educating people into compliance, and if necessary, taking decisive action to set the clear tone that we have to comply. It's not a hope and a maybe, it's a have to. Because we know that that is the only way that we're going to slow the spread, as we have, of this virus, but continue to get on the other side of it. And we're not there yet. If we just throw it all up for grabs, then God help us.
Tia Ewing from Fox TV is asking, what is the protocol for tracking down non-essential businesses? She found a nail salon operating in Logan Square. The customers weren't wearing any PPE. And with so many complaints coming in, how can these businesses be held accountable?
Well, number one, if you see that, call 311 and report it. Our Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Department is very diligent. We've been following up on all along on a number of complaints. We send people out there. If we verify the complaint, we give them a citation, and if necessary, we will shut them down.
Back to the party, it is quite a question. Another reporter is asking, Jennifer Struzik also from Fox, what about the wedding that took place on the street in front of a residence? Should large gatherings not be treated the same?
They should be treated exactly the same, and we are making sure that we identify who's responsible, and we will be taking the same kind of decisive action against that large wedding where the video shows people in cars, but people on the street, not social distancing, not wearing appropriate mask or garb. We can't tolerate it anywhere. It's not just the black millennials. It's a problem wherever it rears its head. We're going to move decisively to, again, help educate, but where necessary, take action to give citations to the people who are responsible.
Dana Kozlov from WBBM is asking, the Chicago Fire Department is going to start at shift change COVID testing at random firehouses. Should this have been done sooner, along with requiring firefighters to wear masks in rigs and at the firehouse?
All of that's been done and been in place for quite some time.
The testing at the firehouse, have they been testing before?
I believe so. I'll double check that, but there's been testing of first responders from the very beginning of this because we have been concerned, obviously, about the folks that are on the front lines and making sure that they're safe. Dr. Artie is standing up and saying, I want to answer that question, so come on up to the podium, Doctor.
She actually had asked if Dr. Arwady had not seen her here, so thank you. We always like to see you, Dr.
Just to clarify, so certainly first responders have been prioritized for testing, have been able to get testing. But yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. So we've now started to be able to really have some more specific testing and investigation in conjunction with the Chicago Fire Department to really make sure that we're bringing testing wherever it is needed. That is always our goal. And recognizing that firehouses themselves could be perceived as congregate settings if you recognize that there are people who are sleeping there, who are spending time there. And so we've been working closely with the Chicago Fire Department and are doing everything we can to make sure that we bring even better testing access to our first responders. They're high on our list as we're continuing to build access to testing across the city.
Do you see that envisioned at police stations as well then for those employees or no?
So we're prioritizing always getting additional testing and really to our first responders. They've been high on our list. Obviously, lots of PPE distribution, lots of work really in partnership with those organizations. And particularly as more testing, rapid testing has started to become available, we're really working to prioritize and make sure that our first responders, just like our healthcare workers, are able to better access that.
Thank you. From Fran Spielman from the Chicago Sun-Times, Police Superintendent David Brown has apologized for failing to give aldermen advance warning that police officers in their districts would be temporarily moved to the south and west sides for a so-called surge strategy to tamp down crime. What lesson should he have learned from this experience? What should he do differently going forward? And why do we need a surge strategy that takes police officers from one neighborhood and moves them to another?
As always, Fran asked about 5 questions in one, but I'll try to tackle them as best I can. Well, first of all, look, the superintendent, in my conversations with him both during the interview process and even before he was officially confirmed by the city council, understood the sense of urgency that we have. I've said this before. We are fighting not only the pandemic of COVID-19, but we're fighting the continuing epidemic of gun violence. We have no time to waste on either. So in working with his executive leadership team and recognizing that we are in an unusual time where while first responders are out there and they're on the front line, they're human. They're concerned about their own well-being, they're concerned about their safety, and they're concerned about what that means for their families. That's one of the reasons why early on in this process we stood up a hotel just for first responders, not those that were sick, but for those who were working those long shifts, wanted to have respite, but worrying about taking something back to their families. So in an effort to continue to move forward on public safety, recognizing the risk attendant to physical contact, officer to resident, the department has conceived the surge strategy, which really effectively is bringing in lots of marked cars into areas that are really suffering from gun violence, in conjunction with stakeholders in the community, and being present with lights, with sirens. And I'm going to knock on wood before I even say it, we're starting to see some promising results. Now, of course, this can't be a circumstance where we drain resources from those districts that have been under-resourced for way too long. And I think the superintendent now understands that. We've had very productive and candid conversations with the aldermen. This isn't a permanent taking of the resources from those departments, from those districts. It was spend a couple hours doing these fixed posts and boxes in these neighborhoods. That's what it's about. And we're moving around different days. We did some on the north side. We did some on the west side, doing some on the south side. But this strategy is a way to engage our law enforcement resources at a time when policing in the way that we traditionally do it is challenging because of the risk of COVID-19.
Fran also wants to know, her question, as a diehard Sox fan, she means you, of course.
Yes.
How do you feel about the latest MLB plan to start the season in June in empty home stadiums and have the Cubs and Sox in the same division to cut down on travel?
Well, look, I have been following closely the news coming, one, because I'm a ridiculous sports fan, but I've been following very closely the news that's been coming out of the various league offices, whether it's the NBA, MLB, NHL, and so forth. There is a desire to get the teams back on the field, but recognizing that doing it in the current environment that we're in carries risk. And so we'll be having and continued discussions with them about a way to do this safely, to minimize on travel. Look, there's a great reluctance to get on a plane, and I understand that. Our airline industry has just been devastated as a result of people's concerns about travel, but also because of travel restrictions that have been put in place by cities and states and all across the country. So giving people an opportunity to see baseball in Chicago, I think, is a good thing, but we got to do it in a way that is safe, not only for the fans, but think about all the employees that are going to be needed. Even if we don't have vendors and concessions, there's still a lot of employees that are going to be there in the ballparks. And of course, if we do that, then you have to think about what's the ripple effect on the surrounding businesses that are, their livelihood is around these sports venues. So there's a lot of thinking that we have to do before we get to, the first pitch that's going to come out. But I think we can do it in a way that is safe, but we've got to
It doesn't sound
collaborate.
50-50 though to you. I mean to me right now from you for this summer.
I think it's going to be a challenge. I said this the other day. It's hard for me to conceive of a world now where we go back to full stadiums with fans.
But
just
even empty stadiums.
But empty is a possibility with public health guidance and precautions to keep people safe, including the players. Baseball's not a contact sport like football, but you when you're running the bases and you're running hard, there's contact that's going to happen. And you sit in the dugouts, there's contact, and social distancing will be challenging. So we just got to be thoughtful about the way in which it's done, and it can't be done independently. It's got to be done in collaboration with the local jurisdictions to make sure that we're adhering to the data that is on the ground in localities. What we're experiencing in Chicago may be different in LA or Seattle or Baltimore or New York or Atlanta and some of the other venues across the country. So we just got to make sure that we're talking to each other.
Have you considered, like New York City has done, of closing a street, perhaps Dearborn, Clark Street, whatever it might be, with Lakeshore Drive closed? Michigan Avenue is certainly busy on nice days to have folks just be able to walk in the middle of the street or ride their bikes.
That's something that's come up a number of times, and we were looking at what the actual experience is of other cities. So we haven't ruled it out, but we also haven't ruled it in. We just want to understand what the impacts are going to be on travel.
And the latest on Lollapalooza?
No update yet, but I expect that we'll have an update shortly.
And does that mean this week? Do you think we would hear? I would think folks would want it. It's getting pretty late.
Yeah, again, we're in conversation with the organizers of Lolla, and as soon as we arrive at a definitive decision, we'll certainly let people know.
Thank you, Mayor, very
Sure,
much. Appreciate it.
A couple of quick questions, Mayor, from Mitch Dudek at the Sun-Times. People who make their livelihoods by offering Lake Michigan charter boat rides are hurting and await the day they can reopen with social distancing guidelines in place. What guidance can you offer those folks and other boaters when Chicago's harbors will open? May? June?
Well, I don't want to speculate, but I've been very clear. For now, the status quo remains. We are working through some of the nuances that flow from some of the loosening of restrictions that the governor indicated will be in effect as of May 1, and we'll be putting those out publicly very, very soon. And I recognize I've heard from a number of boaters who are anxious about whether or not they should move their boats from Wisconsin and bring them down to Lake Michigan. But for now, we're going to maintain the status quo.
From Lisa Donovan at the Chicago Tribune. Mayor, yesterday President Trump suggested that if state governments want federal COVID-19 relief funding, that in his words, and I quote, "We'd want certain things in place. also including sanctuary city adjustments, because what's happening is people are being protected that shouldn't be protected, and a lot of bad things are happening with sanctuary cities, end quote. Considering Chicago's a sanctuary city, what kinds of concerns do you have about being used as a bargaining chip? Do you think it would affect how federal funding relief comes to the state and down to the city?
Well, we're a sanctuary city, and proudly so. And we're never going to retreat from our commitment to support the life and safety of immigrant and refugee communities here. You know, look, the president has said a lot of things over his 3 years plus as the president. And unfortunately, many of the things he says are divisive in nature. And over the course of this pandemic, unfortunately, we've heard him really pander to his base. He's not stopped campaigning, and that's evident and on display every single day when he holds a briefing. So I'm not surprised that he would say that, but I have some confidence in Congress that they are not going to condition whether or not cities, localities receive assistance on the basis of whether or not we pledge allegiance to a racist and xenophobic ideology that the president articulates on a regular basis. We are not going to divide and conquer and barter with the livelihood and lives of our immigrant and refugee residents. They are precious to us. They are part of the fabric of the city. They are our neighbors, and we will continue to do everything that we can to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with them. And I don't care who tries to tear us from our commitment to our immigrant and refugee communities, even if it's the President of the United States. We haven't buckled under that pressure before, and we're not about to now.
We have an on-topic question from A.D. Quigg at Cranes, either for the Realtors Association or Mike Meany. Commissioner Novara suggested a 61% decrease in rent collection in April. Can you talk about the scale of demand so far for rent relief?
Okay. You want to?
Yes, we surveyed our membership on April rents, and they were not quite as high as what the commissioner mentioned. With our membership, it was about March payments were coming in at about 95%, and the April rents were between 85 and 90. So while there certainly was an impact, it was not. It wasn't huge. We were a little bit surprised about that. But I think, again, the key here is to have these conversations that residents need to have the conversations very early on with the property owners and managers, so that they can really take a look at the unique situations of each resident and work out a plan. And there are a lot of different options and a lot of different things that have been concessions that have been made, but it is really on a case-by-case basis. And so, again, we're hopeful that the May rents that we see with, we also know that there is some significant support coming for all residents in the form of the stimulus payments, but also the additional unemployment benefits, and just to go back on what the federal government can do in this fifth round of stimulus, if indeed it happens, which we're hopeful that it will. We are, and our national association and others are pushing very heavily for significant rent relief to the tune of about $100 billion. And that's a big number, but it is, it's really what we need. And we think that that'll go a long way in helping to get people through these next couple of months.
Thank you. Last two questions. Question from Shia at Politico. What's the pushback from other mayors wanting to open up for business, and how do you respond to them?
Well, we have been in a ongoing discussion with hundreds of mayors from across the Chicagoland region. I conduct a call with them every Sunday night for an hour, and we usually have anywhere between 250 and 300 plus mayors that are on that call. We use that as an opportunity to share information. We use it as an opportunity to talk about issues that are unique to particular parts of the region, but also the things that unify us. We share information about our conversations with the governor and folks at the federal level. Dr. Arty and her colleagues are a part of that discussion, so we're sharing public health information. And I understand that there is an anxiety that we all feel about when and under what circumstances that we will open up. And we've offered our thoughts about that in those conversations. What I know is we're not ready, because the science and the data tell us we're not ready. We're still seeing a daily increase in cases. We haven't seen the kind of flattening that we want and need, and we certainly haven't seen the kind of decrease. We look very carefully at a lot of different metrics: overall hospitalization, ICU numbers, the number of people within the ICUs that are COVID positive or under investigation. Those numbers are continuing to either hold steady, but they're not going down yet. And so until we start to see some of those things, in addition, until we have an infrastructure where we've got much wider spread testing than we have now, where we have a whole regime around contact tracing, and where we have the kind of discussion that we've started with our businesses and our other places of congregate settings to talk about what does safety look like in a post-COVID world? What are you going to need to have in your building for your employees to feel safe, for customers to come back? Those are all the important questions that we have to answer individually, but also as a region, before I think we can get there. And it can't be one city, one town, one county goes it alone. That's why in our recovery task force, we have a specific tranche of regional voices, because it's got to be a regional solution. So yes, everybody's anxious. All you have to do is listen to what we heard today and the economic harm that has befallen so many of our residents. That's painful to hear as a leader, and painful to know that we have wear some responsibility in that, because we've said this is essential for keeping people safe. But we don't want to take the risk and see what's happened in places like Japan and Singapore, where they clamp down on mobility very rigidly, and then they open back up only to find the cases spike. That would be catastrophic. And psychologically, I don't know that our residents could bear that. So as tough as it is to stay the course and stay home, it's worse if we move too quickly, if we're imprudent in the way in which we do it, and we capitulate in a way that isn't consistent with the data and the science. We're not going to do that in Chicago.
Last question from Tribe. In the story that they published last night, our reporting revealed a disconnect between some young Black Chicagoans and local officials. Amidst the pandemic, one of the attendees of the West Side House Party over the weekend said that she was unaware of the stark statistics surrounding Black Chicagoans and COVID. Mm-hmm. She also mentioned that she doesn't watch the news and that staying inside can be boring and depressing for people who don't have luxuries like they do in other affluent neighborhoods. The question is, how do you plan to address the need for recreational activities for Chicagoans in divested communities? And do you think the COVID-19 outreach is working to educate young Black Chicagoans in those communities?
So I read that article with great interest, and I really commend it to anybody who's interested in kind of getting an insight on a sector of our community. I think what it pointed out, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in answer to a question from Mary Ann, we have to continue to work hard to meet people where they are. We have a challenge to do that because the access to information and learning is different. The digital divide is real. What young people pay attention to is different than what people who are gray-haired like me might be paying attention to on a daily basis. It's an opportunity for us to learn how to better connect and engage, and clearly we still have some work to do. I mentioned this before. I've got a 25-year-old millennial living in my house. One of my nieces lives with me, and I showed her the videos from that we saw over the weekend, and her response is, "Those people are crazy." So we can't paint with a broad brush and say all millennials are doing this or that. The reality is they're just as diverse as the rest of us. But we've got to double down on our efforts to reach them, to educate them about the risk and the rewards of staying at home. And that work is ongoing. It's a big part of our racial equity task force, our team that we stood up in the wake of the disparities around how Black and brown communities were disproportionately affected by COVID-19. But we will continue through influencers, surrogates, smoke signals, whatever it takes, to make sure that we're reaching young people and really bringing home to them why these kind of parties and these kind of big congregate settings, particularly as the weather gets warm, are putting themselves at risk. And we're committed to making sure that we do that.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Okay. Thank you.